All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. This is episode 52. This is pretty crazy for Dylan and I, and it's even more crazy because we have an awesome guest. We have John Grimsmo on, and this is going to be a really interesting conversation. I know a lot of you guys are excited about this one, just like Dylan and I are. Got a lot of questions loaded up, and let's just start it off with John. How did you get into manufacturing and kind of start off from beginning stages to where you're at now? How did you get from point A to point B?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, man. And I'm excited to be on the podcast. I've listened to a bunch of them, and it's always fun to chit chat with other like minded machinist nerds. And that's kind of where it all started. It was like I've always been a nerd about some stuff, and a lot of times growing up feeling almost guilty about nerdy pleasures. Whether it's like building RC airplanes and nobody else thinks it's cool, or mountain bikes. I was really into mountain biking through high school and building my bike out and learning not only like tricks on the bike, but how a crankshaft works and how to disassemble a chain and all this crazy stuff and building bikes up. And then that kind of eventually translated into cars. And then I learned at the time what felt like everything there was to know about cars. I was rebuilding engines and rewiring entire cars and switching from automatic transmission to manual transmission and doing basically anything I wanted to for $0. Anything I could using forums and YouTube before YouTube, just forums basically for like how to do stuff. So I've always had this insatiable desire to figure things out and to do it myself and to do it for no money. Um, and the passion for cars led to an interest in making things because that taught me to weld and to fabricate and to grind. So like, as a car nerd, if you have an angle grinder and a welder, you're pretty much hero. You can do all kinds of stuff, but that sort of it opened my eyes to like you start seeing these aftermarket parts like really nice pistons and you're like how are those even made? Oh, they're made on these big fancy machines that cut metal. Oh, that's too fancy for me. I'm just a guy in the garage with an angle grinder and a welder. um, but then as I was building one of my engines, I'd go to the local engine building shop, and this guy had like this decked out machine shop, all manual equipment. He had one of those combination mill lathe things that Grizzly sells, and it's like tiny little thing by now comparisons, but it's like a 10 by 22 lathe that has the milling machine attachment, and Grizzly sells it for like $2,000 or $1,500 or something. But this was back in 2005, and I was like drooling. I was like, oh my gosh, the things I could make with that thing. So I'd as he was building my engine, I'd like pester him and bug him and ask if I can hang out and learn stuff and just watch him do stuff and watch him bore a cylinder and ask all kinds of questions. And that was probably one of the beginnings of my interest in machining and manufacturing. Was like, okay, this is cool. And I just fell down the rabbit hole of coolness, with no game plan, no nothing, just like I want to make cool stuff. um, so that a couple of years of that and just trying to figure out other things. And um, always been entrepreneurial, always made no money, trying to do stuff, be a website designer, um, all kinds of little things. For a little bit later, I was anodizing paintball guns in my garage to try to make a buck just before I found knives. Um, but between those times, I kind of fell into manufacturing, and I started to learn, and I started to want to buy some equipment for $0 as I could. And because I was living on my wife's part-time salary and her supporting the house, um, so any dollars that I made certainly just went back into the garage because I wasn't making enough to bring to the house. Um, but yeah, I wanted to make these car parts. I wanted to make short throw shifters and some suspension components and spark plug wires and things like that. So with that, I was able to get my first manual mill, my first manual lathe, little Grizzly things. And then the intention from that point at 2008 was to CNC them for sure, because there were some other guys on YouTube doing that at the time. And I was like, okay, I can totally do this. So over the course of about a year, I CNC'd the lathe first and then the mill. And I felt like a hero because I'm like, oh, sweet, I've got CNC machines and I made them myself. This is so cool. And, I made an automatic tool changer for one of them, and built the power drawbar from scratch and added the stepper motors and wired them all and had this Mach 3 controller. And um, all kinds of stuff, and it was fun, and it taught me valuable lessons early on, even though it took a lot of time because I was doing it for cheap and for no money and for not much purpose. Like the purpose was to make these car parts. Um, but before, like a couple years in, I'm like, you know what? I spent all my time building these machines and almost no interest working on my cars anymore. I don't think I really like cars anymore. And it was one of those too little, too late epiphanies. Um, of like, I'm just so infatuated with this manufacturing industry. I'm not even on the car forums anymore. I don't care anymore. I'm not researching and learning like I was a couple of years ago. Now it's all manufacturing. So where do I want to take this? Where do I want to I was trying to make these parts for old Volvos, which was my passion back in the day. But the problem with people who own old Volvos is they have no money, just like me. So to make a high quality product to sell to people who have no money is kind of a bad business decision. But it, I'd sell some stuff and I'd be able to, invest a little bit more back into the company, but it was not really going anywhere in that market with those kind of products. And that's fine. Luckily, I was in a place in life where, we were getting by. We didn't need a lot of money, didn't need anything. My wife was happy working part time, and we were happy. We had chickens and kids coming up at that time, but it started to get a little stressful for sure because I'm like, rounding 30 or getting close to, I guess, late 20s, and I'm like, I need direction. I got to do something. Even all this stuff I have been doing, I need an actual purpose. I need an actual like, I got to make some money. And I can't explain what it is, man, but something about me just will not go out and get a job. And I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but it is who I am. And as much as
Yep.
all the parents and in-laws are like, just go out, you can do anything. You can be an auto mechanic. You know so much about cars. Yeah, but you could do this, you could do that. Yeah, but I don't know. There's something about it I just can't. And had I reached a breaking point, I certainly am capable of. Like I would have, but I just never got there myself. Um, I'd spend 12 hours polishing and anodizing this guy's paintball gun to charge him $70 for it. So I'd make less than $10 an hour. But I got to do it myself, and it was cash, and it felt cool, and it felt like a stepping
Yep.
stone. And I got really good at anodizing aluminum, which is a pain in the butt to do at home. Um, and all this stuff. And you just learn a lot of skills along the way until one day that anodizing and this little website that I set up led to a guy, buddy that I'm still friends with, Sean. This was 2011. He sends me an email and he goes, "Oh, I see you do anodizing. I've got these knife parts, these ProTech, uh, knives with aluminum handles, the black handles. They're gross. Do you think you can make them green for me?" I was like, "I like knives. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, come on over." And he was local. So he brought over this huge collection of awesome knives, and he's like, dude, you got to get into custom knives. You have all the skills. You're developing all the tools. You like knives, because I was a Boy Scout growing up, and I watched MacGyver like crazy. And between MacGyver and Boy Scout, I've carried a knife in my pocket every day since I was 11 years old. Just a little Swiss Army knife or a Spyderco or something. But but yeah, once Sean opened my eyes up to the knife world, and he's like, guys are charging $500 plus for these knives that you have the ability to make yourself, and quality product you can get behind. And after that, I was just hooked. It was just 2 months later, I'm like scraping together $800 to fly to Vegas and go to a knife show and rub elbows with all the top knife makers and learn. And that was a big turning point too, because it was like, just jump in both feet, you know, go on a trip, go to a trade show, meet everybody, see if this is actually what I want to do, which it absolutely was. And yeah, and that's kind of how I got into manufacturing. That's the beginning of Grimsmo Knives, anyway. What took to get to there?
So after you went to Blade Show that first time, did you come home and were you like immediately designing, or, what was the process like then? Because obviously you knew you're like, okay, let's give this a shot.
Yeah, that was the. It wasn't actually Blade Show because I had just missed Blade Show. Like I learned about the knife industry 2 weeks after Blade Show or something. But this was the USN gathering in Las Vegas.
Okay.
which is just a different kind of organization, much smaller, tighter knit group. Blade Show's kind of like the worldwide show. This is more like all the cool kids that are friends with each other. Um, but yeah, USN was sweet. And coming back from that, you get to go, you get to see all these amazing knives and beautiful artwork and quality and tactical and tactical, and you get to meet these knife makers and ask them questions and show them your work so far, and yeah, so sold. So yeah, after that it was like, okay, I'm making a knife, because at that point I was making handles, aftermarket handles for these Spyderco knives called the Spyderco Manix 2. The plastic handles can unbolt, and I could make fancy aluminum handles and anodize them cool colors and engrave dragon scale patterns on it, honeycomb, etc. Bolt them on, sell them for $80 or whatever they were. And then that was my intro to the knife market. And the problem with that is you're making a product that now costs more than the knife itself. So the customer has to not only have the knife, but they want to spend the knife's cost again to make it cool. And there is a market in that, but it's limited for sure. But it got me into the market, and then over the next few 6 months or 8 months or so, actually took 12 months to actually make a sellable knife from day one. Um, but yeah, we designed the Norseman, and we started the YouTube series Knife Making Tuesdays, which in the first week is literally like, stare at the camera and go, "All right, guys, I'm going to make a knife. Let's figure this out." And the goal was to shave away at least a Tuesday a week to pursue this making a knife craft, designing it, prototyping it, testing it, and share the journey in the videos, which in retrospect was like the greatest decision we ever did, because not only sharing the process and getting feedback, but you're developing a diehard fan base that's like been with you since day one, and it's worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're where you are now, which is what, a 10,000 square foot shop or
Yeah.
9,000 something?
So that was 2011. Now it's 2020. So we got 9 years later. Um, that was in my garage, 400 square feet garage, and now we're 9,000 square feet across two buildings. We've got a team of 8 people, and it's stupid. It's literally to the point where I have to stop and look in my head, and I have to count the CNC machines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we got 6 CNC machines, and
That's awesome.
it's like just moving into this shop changed that for me, because before we were in a like 1,500 square feet warehouse, like little unit, um, for 5 years, I believe. And it was great, but it just got tighter and tighter and tighter, and stuffing 7 or 8 people into there, and more machines, and loud and hot and smelly, and it got tight. So we lucked out. We've been looking for a new shop for years, and finally lucked out on this one, literally across the street from the old one. The move was a cakewalk.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's been cool following along the journey and seeing. I mean, it really looks like, going from a cave to like a real fancy
Yeah,
building. Like that new one, it's really, really
yeah,
nice.
it was nice to begin with, but we're like, we had a little bit of money in the bank just from working hard and saving up. So we're like, let's epoxy the floors, let's put LED lights in, let's make this place nice. And it ended up being very expensive, but worth it, because now we live in like a showroom, and it's gorgeous and makes us so happy, and it's fun to show off on YouTube, and it reflects where we want to be in life and in business, and where how we want to be perceived and how we want to be taken seriously, and it kind of puts us in our own little way on par with all the other big fancy guys that we aspire to be like.
Totally.
Yeah. It's crazy because I've been following you guys on YouTube forever, and it felt like, just yesterday you guys were moving into your last shop,
Yeah.
redoing all that. And it's like, man, like that was how long ago?
It's
5 years ago, you
yeah.
said? And it's like, man, what was I doing in my life 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It's like crazy.
It's funny how time passes. Like I said, 9 years now in the knife industry, and it's both gone by quickly and felt like an eternity, because we've done so much. And my kids now are 7 and 10, and my 10-year-old was like 1 when Sean came over and
Wow.
showed me this stuff. And I remember her walking around and playing with us while Sean was talking to me about knives and stuff. And she was 1 then, and now she's 10, and she's like basically a teenager, and and all this other stuff has happened, while she's grown up. And
That's crazy.
yeah,
That is really cool.
All right. Where do we start, Dylan?
Well, we've got a bunch about just your business in general, and then obviously some very specific ones about the Kern, because that's, I
The
feel like,
Kern.
the hot button topic on
Yep.
everybody's mind. Anybody who's seen your channel or anything like that. Well, we can jump into Kern Rask
Bring
stuff,
it.
I guess.
I got all
Yeah.
night.
Well, actually, I've got one real quick that is not related to that. I was going back through my saved Instagram posts and realized I had saved one of yours where you made the wax stamp. And I don't think I ever heard a follow up on whatever ended up happening.
It's funny. I touched it today. I was in the shipping room and I looked at it. I haven't touched it in months. And I looked at it and I was like, huh, yeah, I remember that now. And then I put it back and I forgot all about it. I was on a phone call actually and just needed a quiet room. So I was in there and just kind of fiddling around, looking around. And but yeah, the wax stamp was something we were having trouble with our actual ink stamp that we put on every package on the brown paper wrapping around the knife, and it was just drying out and it was not being good. So I was like, what would be super sick is just a wax stamp. So I did all this research, and people would shove wax sticks in glue guns, and you could squidge a big blob of glue, and then you can get these custom wax stamps made up. And I was like, I can machine a wax stamp, no problem. Throw some brass in the Nakamura lathe and engrave our logo into it, put a 20 thou tapered ball mill into there, and no problem. And it didn't take that long. I think I stayed late a couple hours one night and made 2 or 3 stamps out of brass, and it was easy, and they're beautiful. And the reason we're not doing it is because I was having glue gun issues and wax issues that I haven't resolved yet. I think I bought a new glue gun as well. I just haven't tried it yet. And I want to do it because it would add a sweet, like, I don't know, not nostalgic, but like just a cool thing to the packaging. But it's
kind of old school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's one of those million projects that like stays unfinished, gets that 90% point. And you're like, okay, I've accomplished it. I'm done now. On to the next. That's the story of my life.
That's pretty funny though that you touched it today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, then actually on to Kern and Rask stuff.
Yeah.
Mech Engineering Services asked, why'd you go with a tombstone for the Rask when you have the pallet system? Would it have been more efficient to just have a bunch of flat pallets, fit 5 or 10 knives on a pallet and swap those out?
Excellent question. Part of it is my stubbornness with the way that we've done it on the Mori so far. So on our 3-axis mill, we've got an orange vise, 6 by 20 inch vise, and we've got every part to make 2 knives on the one pallet, so that every cycle is like 2 knives are done. 2 knives are done every cycle start, and we actually have 2 pallets, so we can get 4 knives in one cycle. And I love that one piece flow cycle. So part of the goal of the tombstone is clinging on to that love of one piece flow. Now, on the Kern and the Aroa pallet changer, there's 25 big pallets and there's 55 friggin' little pallets that they're only 3-inch diameter, so I don't know if I can really put a blade on there or something. But with the 25 big pallets, yes, I could break it out and I could put 1 or 2 blades. I couldn't put too many. I can't put like 10 or 5 or something on a flat pallet. But the problem is you start to break out all the knife parts and you end up distributing so many parts across so many pallets that I don't feel it's an efficient use of space. And then you have a lot more individual pallets to make. And then the Rask pallets will be different than the Norseman pallets. And that 25 is going to disappear pretty quickly, I would think. And I did put a lot of thought into this when I was trying to figure it out. Whereas in my mind, I'm like, if I just do a square tombstone and stick it upright and put, blade here, handles here, blades over here, 1 knife per little tombstone, it's tight, it's compact, the machine can tilt and rotate and get all parts. And then again, every cycle is 1 knife complete. and then I just need 25 of those tombstones split between Rask and Norseman and whatever else we want to do. So that's kind of my thinking of how to optimize the space and still like super maximize it, because my goal is to have 25 pallets, 25 tombstones lined up and just come back on Monday and it's still running. And you can't do that.
Epic.
You can't do that if you split the parts across so many things, because then each pallet's going to run for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And you have to be there to load stuff. Whereas a tombstone's going to run for, I don't know, an hour or 2 or 3. Probably 2. And 25 pallets times 2-hour run, that's like 2 days. But if you split them all up, you've got 8 hours of unattended runtime. That's not super, it doesn't make me super jazzed, to have a big pallet changing machine to only run for 8 hours.
It's a great answer to that question. Yeah.
That is.
Thank you.
I did have one question though, John. On your Mori, you have the 2 orange vices, and Dylan and I had talked about this because I remember at one point you mentioned in a video series that you were having problems with the orange pallets flexing because you took that center chunk out.
Mhm.
And I noticed in one of your videos, this may be wrong, maybe you just didn't show it, but are you taking the pallets off the vices or to load them, or are you leaving them on just so there's no movement?
We do both.
Okay.
I think, let me think. I think it was the Rask pallet from years ago that had this huge cutout in the middle, and then we made new Norseman pallets that did not have the cutout. But yeah, it was like this lightweight cutout, because I'm like, I don't want to pick up this thing that weighs like 25 pounds. Let's make it lighter. But the way that the dovetails on the orange vice grip it, they're bowing the actual 6x20 fixture. And with the design of my fixture too, it gets thin in the middle because there's a center pallet that goes in the middle. But yeah, if you torque it down, even like not even He-Man strength, but just like normal strength, it will flex up like 3th thou or 4th thou or something, which was throwing off our tolerances. So now what we do, sometimes we'll leave them in, sometimes we'll pull them out. We're free to do both. We tighten it like just past snug, like not tight at all, and that's plenty tight. That's all it needs. And yeah, we've had killer repeatability for the past, I don't know, year, 2 years, with that method. So
Okay.
yeah,
I was just curious.
yep. I like the orange vice pallets, except I don't like, how they come with just dowel pins, and
Yeah.
the aluminum pallet goes on top, and then as you pull the pallet off, first you got to lift it up like an inch to clear the dowel pins, and then they stick in weird places and they pop and etc. So I machined my own threaded dowel pins that thread into the orange base and stay there, and have like a domed pin on the top. So our aluminum pallets just have a hole in the bottom. Click on, click off, super easy, and they're short. They're like 1/4 inch, sticking up a 1/4 inch off the pallet.
Okay. Yeah, that eliminates that annoying problem.
Mm-hmm.
So down the line, what's the plan for the Mori? Because I'm assuming you're going to move the Norseman over to the Kern as well.
Correct. Yeah, the good thing about the Mori right now is it's literally steady. It's just like make 6 Norsemen a day, no problem. And why stop that anytime soon? So I get to keep that going. Angelo runs that, and then I get to play on the Kern. It's beautiful 5-axis palletized machine. I get the freedom to do that while the Mori still makes money. And then once I figure out once the Rask is in good production, and then we start to bring the Norseman onto the Kern as well, then that frees up the Mori to do kind of whatever. And I don't have like a solid, I don't have more work for it. If anything, it's going to sit more. But we'll find something. We always find something.
Will that be like your R&D machine then for the time being?
Exactly. It's still a great machine, like super killer machine. So it becomes more of a productivity issue as opposed to an utmost quality issue. What's the best job for the right machine kind of thing. But, if I had my way, I'd put literally everything on the Kern. But it's can't have all the cake.
No.
Totally. So speaking of the Kern, we had, 5 people asked: T5 Manufacturing, Chief Bub, Yates Precision, and Obsidian Tools all ask what your thought process behind. And like Yates, Jake, chimed in like, why not a high-end horizontal or a large palletized VMC? T5 was asking, why the Kern and not a used machine. Let's kind of
Mhm.
dive into what besides full Grimsmo. Let's
Oh, that
like
that was going to be my answer.
but like what specifically drew you to it? Like, was it the automation? I mean, I know you visited their factory, so obviously that was probably a big deciding factor, is seeing them being made and meeting the guys behind them. But
Yeah,
what made you go down that path? Because it's kind of a,
it's
well, not even kind of, it is a very unique path for, especially for a knife maker to go down.
absolutely, it's a huge jump for any manufacturer to go from a Mori that cost like, what was it, 125, 150,000 US, to the Kern that's 7 to 800,000, fully palletized with all the tools and the Regal fix holders and the PG press and all that. And it's something that's been on my mind for years because we got the Mori 5 years ago. I mean, that thing's going to be paid off in months now. I'm super excited. I'm going to have a
That's
party when that
awesome.
paid off.
Yeah.
But it's also our cheapest machine now, so I'm not that excited.
That's crazy.
It's our first and now also our cheapest machine, but still, it's almost paid off.
Man.
Super excited about that. But yeah, for years I was like, okay, so what's the next step after the Mori? How do we? Well, obviously we're growing. Demand is insane for our knives. I go to IMTS, I go to the Canadian CMTS, I go to tool shows and I talk to the guys, and I was like, okay, if you had, I talked to the sales reps and the technicians and all the smart guys, and I was like, if you had unlimited budget, here's what we make, here's how we make them now, what would you do? And mostly the clear answer is to go with a horizontal machine with a pallet pool of 5 tombstones or something. And I agree, from a high production perspective, it's literally what we're doing on the Mori, just sideways and more. So you could have 4 orange vices on a tombstone, and you could have 5 of those. You could have 20 orange vices with these pallets going nonstop. And for high production, that's awesome. That is great. Our immediate goal is not high production. We don't want to be the next Spyderco. We don't want to just keep pumping out the exact same product without adding some flair, some coolness, not only to the brand but also to the product. And I'm just in love with 5-axis machining, as we all are. Just we're all drooling over Instagram for years, seeing the capabilities and the possibilities of it. And once I started to realize that you could put a tombstone on a 5-axis and still have one piece flow and still have pallet changing, and you get so many more tools on your typical 5-axis, not all of them, but the 30 tool changer in the Mori is packed. We literally use 30 tools every day to make our knives. One cycle uses 30 tools, and we have no room for extra. If we want to do a fancy engraving or pattern, something's got to come out, and it's got to be a side job, like it's standardized right now. So I'm like, I need something with more than 30 tools, and if I'm gonna do it, it's got to be palletized because I want it to run more than what I'm capable of loading in one cycle. And you just kind of let your mind play, and it's played for years, and I spent so much time thinking about all this, and I did all my research for most of the machine tools out there, whether we go with a horizontal. I never liked the idea of a horizontal. I get that they're productive and awesome, but I'm like, I don't know if they're awesome enough for me. It just doesn't get me excited,
Don't tell that to Orange Vice Eric.
I love Eric, and it's amazing for him. But me, it just feels like a Mori that tipped over, like my 3-axis Mori that tipped over and is more productive. And that's great. It's just not really where I wanted to go with the business.
That's fair.
So then I started to look into 5-axis machines, the UMC 750, but it only has like 30 or 40 tools immediately out. Started looking at the Matsuras because I'm really, really close with the local Matsura dealer. They've got the MX 330 that has 90 tools and like 10 pallets. And I'm like, that's pretty interesting. That's a cool machine. What could I do with 10 pallets? So I bring it into Fusion and I start designing like tombstones and, 90 tools. I could do so much with 90 tools. You'd have redundancies and backups and it would just run forever. And then you look into the LX 160 from Matsura, which is a smaller, like 160 millimeter tombstone, even smaller than the Kern. But it's got 200 tools or 106, I forget. 190 tools, a lot.
That thing's tiny though.
Yeah, it's a tiny machine. So I drew that up and I was like, yeah, that's probably just under the size that I need. And then you look at the Grobs and the Hermleys and the GF Microns and all that, and all different size ranges and stuff. And I'm like, I don't need something too big. So I start to list in my head what I actually want. And I'm like, okay, if money were no object, definitely needs a lot of tools. Definitely needs at least 10 pallets. The more the merrier, though. I was still in my old shop, but we were planning the move because I couldn't fit a 5-axis machine in the old shop. But I'm like, we're not going to get this giant, huge mega warehouse. So I still want a small machine. I don't want this massive footprint machine. So I need a tight package. Need a relatively small working area. Like I think the Kern now has 13.5 inch working circle, which is perfect for what we need. It's actually more than what we need, but it's nice. And I started to look at all these machines. Matsura was getting high on my list, and then looking at some others, and then I think it was Saunders that was talking a lot about Kern and some of our other buddies. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's the Grimsmo of CNC machines, of 5-axis machines. So I started to look into it more and more, and then I still didn't know too much about them. When Saunders was on one of our podcasts, was literally like, he's been planning this trip to Europe to tour a bunch of factories, and he's like, yeah, I'm leaving in 4 days. You should come and just go visit Kern, and you can also visit Tornos and all that. And I was like, okay. So literally 4 days later, I was on a plane. As on the drive to the airport, I stopped by Elliot Matsura, our dealer, and I signed the paperwork for the Tornos, our Swiss lathe. And then I get on a plane and I fly to Switzerland and I visit the Tornos factory, and then I drive to Kern in Germany. And I spent a couple days there. I learned everything about Kern. My mind was absolutely blown. I literally took one of my stickers and I slapped it on one of the machine castings, and I said, hold this for me while I think about it. And they took me very seriously, and they pestered me, for the next few weeks and months. And I was half joking, but also half very serious, because I got to tour their production factory, where they have two buildings, one where they build the machinery, and one they're a job shop, and they make like super tight tolerance, all kinds of crazy stuff using their machinery. And they have like, I don't know, dozens of Kerns in that building. And seeing how they work and the workflow and the way they work their pallets and the way they work their tool management and the quality of the parts coming off and the intricate, details and the finishes and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just end of story. How do I make this work? So I literally spent the next 4 months going, oh my gosh, guys, how do we make this work? Talking to my wife, talking to my father-in-law, and like, this has to happen. And it did. And then 10 months later, after lots of back and forth and lots of financing deals and trying to convince the banks this is a great idea, which wasn't that hard for us. It's still a big thing. 4 times more expensive, or 2 or 3 times more expensive than our next most expensive machine, which is the Swiss. Purchased just a few months after getting the Swiss, so we're like in debt up to our eyeballs, but in a good way because we have really good financial planning. And yeah, it's and now there's a Kern in my shop.
Awesome. I don't think I had even heard of Kern until Saunders' tour of Nicholas Hacco.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, oh, what is this strange company? And then looked into it a little bit, and I was like, oh, there's not much info on them. So I guess, I'll leave them alone for now.
I heard about it at IMTS 2018, but I missed their booth because I just was busy looking at other stuff. But I heard the guys talking about Kern there, and I was like, yeah, I should go check that out. And then I kicking myself later because I'm like, I could have seen it then. I could have started this whole process earlier. But some things you just can't rush.
So part of Chief Bub's question about the Kern was also / are you anxious at all about the ROI? And we had a few questions that were, the machine's been sitting for a little while, and you obviously you're getting accustomed to an entirely new way of thinking, but are you feeling the stress of, having an ROI on this machine, or are you just enjoying the learning, or,
Well, there's one thing to know about me is I am not fast. I am very slow. And I, contrary to most people's tastes, I don't, how do I say this? I don't always look at the ROI first, because we're not a job shop. We have steady production right now. We make some profit, so we can afford to eat the losses, I guess, for a couple of months while I learn this thing. And like, we've certainly spent way more money on it so far than it has made us, because it's made us zero. I haven't sold a single part coming off the Kern yet, and it's been sitting on my floor for 5-6 months.
You got a deadline now, though. I heard the
Yep.
do have
the
a
other day.
deadline. Yeah, we can get to that in a minute. But it's all for the greater goal. It's for the I know what it's going to do for us, and I know what I'm planning for it to do. And within a month or two of that, it's going to wipe out all of the 6 months of prep, and that's what I'm okay with. And you know, like I said, we've got 8 people at the shop. I'm in charge. I still hold way too much responsibility and things that I have to do, and that's something I work on every day. But I don't have 8 hours a day to play on the Kern, and that saddens me. I wish I do, but I mean, I'd go for weeks without even touching it, without even looking at it, and that makes me cry. But I wish I was a dedicated employee that could spend 8 hours a day mastering this thing. And luckily, in a weird way, I don't mean luckily, but quarantine happened, and everybody pretty much stayed home, and I got the shop to myself for the most part for 7 weeks. Oh my gosh, did I ever play on the Kern during that 7 weeks?
Yeah, blessing in disguise
Yeah.
there.
So I don't want to make light of the situation, but it was certainly nice to have that freedom to be able to put the time I needed into learning that machine, and it's paid off, because now I'm getting much more comfortable with it, and I can confidently make a part fairly quickly, and I'm getting faster and faster, and it's just making the light at the end of the tunnel of like making money on this machine my way much closer. So I'm super.
Totally.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
mean,
love those clamps that you made recently.
Mhm.
Those clamps came out great.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
it sounds like you're going about the overarching challenge of getting this up and running, and like you said, to the point of where you want it to be. I mean, it's definitely going to take time,
yeah,
and
it's
I
all or
think,
nothing,
like you said, yeah, it's a total. All this time is an investment, and like you said, once it's streamlined, like the Mori is, I mean, you're just going to be giggling and laughing. So,
Yeah, it's literally going to print money at that point, which is
oh yeah,
awesome. And I mean,
yeah,
that's what happens when you spend $700,000 on a machine. It
I would hope
better print.
so.
but um but yeah, and so the goal that was sort of pressured upon me, it sort of started as a joke like a week and a half ago. This new knife maker is coming up, and somebody challenged us, oh, who's going to sell the knife first, a Rask from Grimsmo, or this new guy making a knife? And I was like, done, I'm in, let's do it. And I think,
Oh yeah, we've got a heap of questions from Split 141.
yeah, that's the guy. And but that turned into my personal goal of like, you know what, darn it, I don't do goals. Like, I suck at creating goals and timelines and schedules and things like that, and I part of me embraces that in my wild and crazy nature, but part of me is like really mad at myself for not being able to do that. So I was like, screw it. End of June 2020, I'm selling a Rask. I'm selling the first Rask. That
Awesome.
gives me 2 weeks from today um, to do it, and I have a lot of work to do.
Oh yeah.
But
So how's
if I
the
don't set the goal, like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to putz around and fiddle and dick around
Yep.
and slowly pick away at it. And I'm sick of doing that. I'm actually sick of doing that. I'm done. It's going
Yeah.
to happen.
It's
so
a
on the
good wake up
programming
call.
side, are you I mean, obviously you have all of this 5-axis stuff to get your head around too, but you've also dropped spindle size and power quite a bit, or torque, I
Mhm.
guess. Has that been kind of difficult to change gears? Because I mean, the more you can just probably pound through anything
Yeah,
slow and steady and just hog with whatever, and that's a pretty tiny HSK spindle in
exactly. Like,
comparison.
the Mori's a Cat 40 big plus, 20 horsepower. It's a monster. It's a beast. I can bump it and crash it, and it'll just cut through anything. Um, but the Kern, you got to be a lot more careful of. Not only is it expensive, but it's more delicate. It's got the HSK 40. There's no drive dogs, so you don't want to spin the tool holder. And it's got 42,000 RPM, so the torque range is much different. And if you stick to typical speeds and feeds, I'm still running end mills like 5,000 RPM, and I'm like, how do I use 42,000 RPM? I don't understand this yet. So the smaller the tools, the more you get to use that RPM, or you decrease your radial load and you get to jack up your SFM. And I'm learning this stuff. I'm certainly nowhere near where I need to be at it, but it's fascinating. And it's weird hearing that machine like chatter or vibrate, or you're holding a 5-axis part upwards and it just starts bouncing on you and you're like, what is happening? Do I slow down this or do I slow down that? I don't know. On the Mori I would just run it.
Right. Yeah. No, I know a lot of us armchair machinists watching you use that small face mill
Yeah.
on one of your first Mori. We were like, no, don't do that. Use a small mill. But that's part of learning for sure.
Yep.
And you got it worked out, so it looks great.
And it's weird and fun to be able to share that process, and even have the whatever you call it, to not be afraid to share some mistakes. And I don't share all the mistakes. I certainly hide some of them, but if the camera's on and I made a mistake, I'll be like, crap. Okay, I'll share that.
It's recorded.
Whatever. It'll help somebody learn, or 90% of the people will just gain secret enjoyment from watching me fail, and that's fine too.
Well, I think it's definitely nice, like, especially if you listen to your guys' podcast, like you were talking about the first time you were tabbing and you threw that part, and like anybody who had watched your video had seen you throw that part
already.
So it's that, yeah, exactly. So it's cool that you share that kind of stuff, because I know a lot of people, especially on social media, just like to show the fancy, shiny parts and not the 30 parts that they threw out of the jaws trying to get there.
Yep. And it's the problem with that. It's the same problem with social media in general, is this, fronting of making everything perfect. And then it makes everybody else jealous and feel like they're a piece of garbage because they can't do it, or they're not there yet, or whatever. But I like to show the realness to some of it, the struggle, whether it's talking about on the podcast or, doing a vlog, and just like I've been doing since Knife Making Tuesday in 2011. And it's like, this is not easy. This is one of the most challenging things I've ever pursued, is this manufacturing industry. And I love it so much because it's a daily challenge and a grind, and it's just fun. And for some stupid reason, I love bashing my head against the table. Why isn't this working? Maybe
it's just not reality for people to be posting shiny parts and all that. And I appreciate people like yourself that, show that, hey, it took me 2 weeks to get here. I finally did, and here's why.
Yep.
Yeah. Plus, there's like such a good community out there that if you post something you screwed up and you're still banging your head against it, most likely by the end of the day you'll have 5 or 6 comments of like, hey, try this.
Yep. And I learned that early, like first few videos, and that helped reinforce my need to share those mistakes as well, because it was like, wait, it was blowing my mind. I was like, wait, so I screwed up, I made a mistake, I posted it, I feel super bad about it, and 4 guys are helping me with the right solution that I didn't know about. Wow, okay, yeah, this is a good thing.
Yeah, and 4 other guys learned not to do what you did and save some money or time. Or
of course, yeah, exactly. And then 18 guys are like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong." Well
yeah,
thanks.
We don't talk about them.
I know that, but
yeah, it's really easy to armchair machine when you're watching other people's videos. I'm definitely guilty of it, and I think anybody who's a machinist, there's that little bit of ego that we all have, because we are running $100,000 machines, so you kind of have to be a little full of yourself. You're like, yeah, I got it right, I'm doing it right, until you blow something up. So
and you need that confidence to be able to send it sometimes. Like you hold the feed hold, you walk it in, you do it, but at some point you just got to let it fly and deal with the consequences.
You heard it here first, folks. Grimsmo said send it.
I did. Yep. I like send it. It's a good one.
Oh, no. So we had another question from Tangent Darts, and he said, what's more difficult to wrap your head around, the 5-axis side of machining or the Swiss?
I think the 5-axis is a little tricky because I was also learning a whole new control. All my 3 other machines are FANUC controls, and surprisingly, 3 different machines have 3 different interfaces to FANUC and make them completely different to operate. But they're similar, architecture and code and structure and all that. And then I go to Heidenhain on the 5-axis, and I'm learning. It's like learning PC after you know Mac, or the opposite, I guess.
It's a good way to put it.
They're that different. The code looks different. There's Q parameters. There's everything's, M8 still turns on the coolant, but that's about the only familiarity. It's like feed rate is not an F value. It's put in a Q parameter in the beginning of the code, and then it's referenced later as a Q parameter. And I'm like, whoa. So you can change the feed rate everywhere with that top line in the code. Interesting. But to answer the question, I think Swiss is more complicated because 5-axis is fairly straightforward other than the weird planar spatial movements, like probing tilted and all that stuff. That's confusing. But Swiss is like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening at once. You got, like, I'm used to it now. I've had my Swiss for a year. I'm fairly decently good at it. And then past few weeks, I've been teaching Sky, one of our guys, to do it. And I get to see his mind explode while I'm teaching it to him and while he's in control of the machine. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you don't know this yet. Okay, well, yeah, I forgot. Oh, geez, I'm so used to running it that, like, yeah, like, it's 2 machines in one. 2 things are happening at once. So you got the part cutting on the main spindle, and you also, so your left eye is on the main spindle and your right eye is tracking the sub spindle. and you're like, holy crap, so much is happening at the same time. So there's codes you can separate. You can run only the main spindle, and then you can separate and run only the sub, and calm yourself down and actually understand what's going on. And then you got 2,000 psi of oil spraying everywhere, and you can't see anything, and everything's tight. And yeah, Swiss is harder, but
And oil sucks.
oil sucks.
Yes.
I will never put oil in a mill. I'm okay putting it in the Swiss,
Yeah.
but it's never going in a mill. The thought of, like, when I was at Kern, they had oil in one of their Kerns, the one we were playing on, and like the vise and the fixtures and the parts, and he's pulling this pallet out of the machine and dumping it on the bench. And there's just like a cup of oil that just came with it and spews all over the bench. At least on the Swiss lathe, like, you got these tiny little parts that come off that have very little oil on them. So,
yeah.
gross.
I will say though, it keeps your machines pretty nice. You find a 25-year-old machine that's run oil its whole life and it looks brand new.
Yeah. Okay, I hadn't thought of that, but I could see that.
Yeah.
So we've got a few questions actually about the Swiss. Split 141 actually, he said if you had to buy a brand new Swiss lathe again and you didn't have the Tornos, would you buy it again or would you buy something else? And to go along with that, for somebody who's looking at making knives and needs turning capabilities, would you start with a Swiss or would you start with a full-size lathe like you did?
I was actually just texting him, DMing him this morning about similar questions.
He's trying to beat you to the deadline.
I know, yeah.
Can't wait for the podcast.
Well, yeah, June 30th, man. You better have your knife done.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
John will.
Yeah. We haven't set any terms or prize or anything, but we should do something silly. Anyway, okay. I'm trying to remember what the question was. Swiss something. Oh, which one would I buy? So 2016, before that, we had the Tormac lathe. And I was making all the knife hardware, the screws and our spacers and our stop pins, and our pivots, like, and our bearing. Like, we make every part of our knife in house. We make all the screws and everything, and we mostly always have, or certainly always wanted to. So the Tormac lathe was great at the time, but it was slow and it was not super productive, and it was decently accurate. But I needed more capability. I needed a sub spindle. I needed something. So 2016, I'm sitting there kicking myself going, okay, do I get a Swiss or do I get a bigger lathe that I can do more stuff with? And they cost, roughly the same. The Swiss ended up being a bit more expensive, 10 or 20% more, but, roughly similar prices. And I ended up going with the Nakamura AS200, and putting 5C collets on it so I can run anything up to 1 inch diameter. And at the time, I was like, okay, this will be good because I can make flashlights on it then. 5 years later, I still haven't made a flashlight. I want to. But that was the justification. It's like, basically, the conversation goes, honey, darling, my wife, if I get this, we can make knife stuff and we can bring in a new product. We can make flashlights, we can make other stuff. This is a much more capable lathe that can make anything up to 1 inch diameter and our tiny stuff. And it did. We made it work. After I got the Swiss, it was fairly clear I should have gotten the Swiss first. And I say that sort of, I don't know, sad because I made the wrong choice, but I learned from it. And now I get to teach you guys. Dude, we make almost everything we make is tiny and intricate and tight tolerance. Swiss, 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 all day long.
Yeah.
And here I've got this big turret, dual spindle Y-axis lathe, which is a killer lathe. But for doing the kind of work that I was doing, tiny little tight intricate parts with lots of milling and stuff, it's not the best thing. So I was battling with it for making those kind of parts. And then you get on the Swiss and the parts are literally twice as fast and better. And it's like, I try not to think about it, but I go back in time like, man, if I had this lathe 2 years ago, yeah, we would have been further in life.
So would you buy a Tornos again, or are there things that you don't like about it? Or
I was actually just on the phone with Tornos, like the person head of Tornos North America called me randomly. I haven't seen her in 4 years since IMTS 2016. She just called me and she's like, "Oh, everybody here watches your videos and we're such big fans of you." And I was like, "Sweet." But I told her too. I was like, when I got it, I was on the fence between Citizen and Tornos. And there's lots of lathes on the market. There's Star and Tsugami and lots of others, and they're all great and they all have different purposes. It's like buying a car, all cars will get you A to B, but which one's going to do it the way you want, fast or in style or whatever. And all lathes have different capabilities and size ranges and stuff, but I'd narrowed it down to Citizen and Tornos being, in my opinion, two of the very best brands out there, kind of fitting with the full Grimsmo theme. And I went Tornos for a lot of reasons, because I have great local support with a company that I bought my Nakamura from that I'm super close with. I can ask them for anything. I've already met a lot of the Tornos people in the US as well. And it's a very fully featured lathe. It's got, just as much, if not more, tooling and options than the Citizen did that I was comparing. And I know a lot of people are super happy with Citizens, like Danny Rudolph, big fan, Danny. He loves the Citizens, and I've got nothing against that at all. But sometimes you just gotta, PC or Mac, which one's your choice? So I chose to go Tornos, and if I were to get another Swiss / when I get another Swiss, I'll probably just get another identical Tornos and just tool.
So I know you talked about, John, on, I think it was a business of machining maybe, but I think it was the idea of, would you ever sell a machine? Could you ever see yourself selling your Nakamura and maybe buying another Swiss with that?
Yeah, I think I was actually kind of taken aback by that question when he asked me. I was like,
I remember it caught you kind of off guard.
Right.
Like, you never thought of that.
I literally never thought of it. I'm like, these are my children. Why would I sell my children?
You don't sell children.
No, you just get more. No, so I almost never think about it. Like, I guess it occurred to me at some point, like, would I get something better than the Mori and then sell the Mori? And now I'm like 3 months away from payment deadline, and I'm like, no way, I'm keeping that thing till I die.
Yeah.
That thing's mine. But it does have value. I mean, I could sell it for 80 grand or whatever, and I could put that into something more applicable if the time comes when it's sitting and not being used. And same for the Nakamura. At one day, maybe I will sell it. Maybe I'll get something instead with the proceeds. We're a year and a bit away from paying that thing off too, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, I don't think about it, but these are the business decisions that I need to open my mind to and not be so closed and think of them as children, but they're assets, they're tools. And if they're not being well used, then it's a tool. Like put that hammer down and pick up the other kind of hammer that's the better job.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So in this same vein, Easton from Moria Manufacturing asked, have you thought about making the Saga pocket clips on the Tornos, or is the tooling too cost prohibitive? Because I know that's a really long cycle time in comparison to your other parts.
Yeah. First, I'd like to give a shout out to Easton. Just today, dude, I finally opened the package that you sent me like 4 weeks ago of his Cat 40 tooling block. What do you call it? Tool tightening fixture thing. Yeah, he sent me one a while ago, and I finally opened it, and it's really nice. I can't wait to mount this thing up. Making the Saga clip. So right now we make it on the Nakamura. It's a 23-minute cycle time, and a lot of heavy milling. There's a lot of titanium to remove in that pen. I don't think the Swiss has the cojones to remove that much titanium, to be honest. I'm sure it can be done, but I'm much more excited about having the plan we're doing now, actually starting tomorrow, is we're going to blank out the turned profile and the bore, the critical bore on the lathe. We're going to cut some dovetails into it, and then we're going to slice it off and throw it on the Kern, and the Kern's going to play and do all the milling on the rest of it. And I'm like,
Ooh.
yeah.
That was going to be my follow-up question.
Oh,
Yeah. You got all those tiny pallets that
Yes,
seem
exactly.
perfect for that kind of stuff.
So I think I can get 3 clips on a little Christmas tree angled
that's
upwards.
gonna be cool.
And I had like a 2.5 hour, we did a screen recording with my buddy Phil Buttersworth, the Dr. Phil, where we went through the clip. We went through Fusion Cam and how he would design it and how he would hold it and clamp it for a second op. And he's like, well, this is a challenging one. So we'll put that video up on YouTube there in the next week or two. But yeah, I want to put that on the Kern. And then, like I said, I have 55 of those tiny pallets. So I need to load them up with this small jobs, high volume jobs that can just run in between other stuff. And I've learned that there's an upgrade to Heidenhain that I now have to buy for $4,000. That's literally just like, oh yeah, type in this code and it'll unlock the thing. But it's a pallet management software. And it sounds sick because it'll allow you to schedule and reschedule and move around jobs that are upcoming, and it'll allow you to like flag pallets as done or not. It'll look ahead to tool life for all of these pallets coming up and tell you what to replace well ahead of time.
That's cool.
And you can pause it and all that stuff. So basically, if I need the Kern to play, I can pause that. And then the second I'm done playing, I can say, go back to production and just make clips, and it'll schedule it all. And that's kind of the plan that I want. I need filler work that's valuable, like the clips, in between all the playing, in between all the knife making and stuff like that.
Totally. I think I want to say Rob Lockwood had talked about that on when you guys had him on your podcast at AU. Like that using a 5-axis pallet pool, you can have like near 100% spindle uptime because you can just, I got to make a fixture for the next part, and I'm making the fixture, and then I'm setting it up, and then all that stuff.
Yep. Or like what Phil does is he'll like put the material in the machine and then go to cam and run the first 3D adaptive toolpath, post it, and then he's got 20 minutes of 3D adaptive machining to like program the rest of the part. And I'm like, oh man, that's so cool.
I've been doing that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great tip. Like anytime I see a lot of 3D, I'm like, all right, so I'll just throw 3D adaptive and like a 3D contour and start that going, and then I'll program all the holes and the taps and all that stuff real quick.
Whereas I'm sitting here in my pajamas, programming at home on a Saturday for like 12 hours, just trying to get it all done so I can come in on Monday and make something.
Oh yeah, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What other? I'm trying to think of your product line. What else can you make on the small pallets?
So we've got. I want to put the clips on it for sure. We've got the knives are going to have a lock insert that'll be made of hardened stainless steel. So I'm going to make this window frame fixture. It's like it'll be a 2x2, 2-inch by 2-inch window. So I'm currently designing, and I'll be making that probably near the end of the week to be able to hold these lock inserts so I can make them. So I'll probably have a few of those. I want to make fixtures to hold our pen tube on a little pallet. Like I'll make I'll turn down a tube holder, so you just slip a tube on top and put a screw on top, and that will allow us to do some crazy milling around the outside of the tube on the Kern which would be
Oh, cool.
sick.
Yeah.
And then so the Nakamura will bust out tubes. It'll drill the deep hole. It's good at milling, but it's not great at milling. Whereas the Kern is great at milling and has plenty of tools. So I'm like, let's try to spread things out across the machines that are best at what they're best at. So yeah, between that, the clips, the tubes, lock inserts, and then we've got some other products that I've been working on that I think you guys would like over time. That'll be
Ooh.
perfect for all those little pallets. Something I've been sitting on for like
Awesome.
3 years.
A wax stamp?
Ooh, fancy. No, it's
How are you liking the Rigo fix, by the way? We had a demo at my day job of that stuff, and I couldn't convince them to get it then. But
yeah.
you know, the more we look at heat shrink and all that stuff, like it seems like that's kind of the way to go.
Literally everybody has the same answer. It's really expensive and it's really good. And I like it. It's fast. It's easy as long as you clean them and wipe down the tools before you put them back together. It's super accurate. I haven't even checked run out because I just know it's really good. But I should, because I always check run out. I just haven't been busy. It's a poor excuse. But yeah, it's great. It's fast. It's easy. The automatic unit works really well and fast and just nicer. Sometimes I put ER collets in the Kern and I'm like, oh, this feels dirty now. Like, this is not as nice.
Do you have to check your shank tolerances when you buy end mills using that system?
I don't. I just trust, but maybe I should be. I guess
I was just thinking, I don't know.
It would
yeah.
depend on who you're buying from. If you're buying like super cheap carbide off Amazon, then who knows? But I know a lot of my tools are from Lakeshore Carbide. I know they use really good Kennametal carbide, and a lot of the fancier tools that I use too are just they start with a really tight tolerance base carbide.
Yeah. Did you end up buying those coolant tubes?
I haven't yet. No, I have like 20 of
But
them.
you're not going to make them?
No, I'm not gonna make them this stupid.
Whew, okay.
Yeah. It was a thought though for a while. I could do that.
Oh, I know. I watched the video and I feel like I was one of many yelling at my screen.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
just buy them, please don't.
Yeah.
Rasks.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Man, I fall into that rabbit hole. Like, I have actual things that will make money, but I can make this thing first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like you said, 90% of the way there, and then you're like, yeah, I'm done. Okay,
Yeah,
move on to the next project.
Well, it's funny because there's
Yeah.
this other machine shop, Madsen Machine, I think. They got a Kern just like mine or similar to mine. And literally they're making production parts, making money 40 hours a week, like a week after getting it. And part of me is very jealous, but part of me is like, that's okay. They're a job shop. This is what they do. They have like Fanuc 5-axis machines, and like, this is what they do. And this is why they bought the machine. That's amazing. I'm really happy for them, really proud of them, super jealous of their ability to do that. I'm just not there yet. And I have different purposes and needs, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, for what I am using it for. And that's okay. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That long journey is going to be so worth it.
It is. I'm so excited. I want it today. So focus.
Yeah.
That's what I got to do, man.
Yep. So I guess now we got a bunch of kind of business related questions. And then, of course, we got a bunch from Split still.
Yeah.
A little all over the place. So I guess this is going to be kind of out of order, but we have one from Stern Made is, where do you see yourself in 10 years, still making knives and EDC gear, or doing something totally different?
I don't know. 9 years ago, I certainly didn't think I'd be here. I knew I'd be playing. I knew I'd be making stuff. But my vision then of now was like so small. Now it's 100 times more than what I could have envisioned then. And I wonder if the next 10 years is going to be more than I can envision now. I have goals and I have visions for where I know we can go. But often I think about, like, what is possible? Where could we go? Do we want to grow to be huge? I think we could. I think we could if we wanted to. Do we want to? I don't know. Part of me is like, man, the sky's the limit. It's a lot of it's management and business and organization at this point that will lead to the growth. We have a raving fan base. We have great products. We can make more great products. We can grow the raving fan base. And we've put in the work to do that. For us to scale up from here is going to take a lot of business structure that we're putting into place. But I don't know. It's tough. It's, at some point you just slow down the growth because you're happy, because you're good, because you're like, you just don't just want to chase the dollar. You want to make sure it's happy and fun for everybody. And you've got a great team and a culture that loves to be there and do what they do. And we're putting a lot of emphasis into that right now. And we're putting a lot of work into it too, so that we don't lose track of that. So we don't just treat everybody like robots and, expect them to come in and get the whip cracked at them, because I don't want that. I want a cool place to work and live, and I want to make a dent in this world in the weird way that we can. So we're going to use that direction to see where it takes us.
Awesome. So Buddy from Heinz Speed asked, with your family growing and requiring more time and the difficulty of balancing work and family, do you ever wish that you had kept the business smaller and in the garage and just upgraded your machines in your garage, like Danny Rudolph or something like that?
Mm-hmm. In the garage that we were at, we were super limited. It only had not a lot of power, 230 single phase. The Tormac mill and lathe and surface grinder and buffers and tumbler was already like maxing our system. Plus the floor was garbage, and there was a cistern underneath with water. Like, our drinking water was literally under the machinery in the garage, and it was all cracked and stuff. We were moving. But I will admit, it was really tough. You want to get into business and family and life and stuff. I wanted to grow, and Eric wanted to grow, so we moved out of the garage, kept the house, but moved out of the garage, got the industrial warehouse, bought the Maury. But up until then, I've spent literally every day at home with my wife and now our one and then two young kids. And then it changed for me going to work every day and being away from my young kids and being away from my wife for 8-10 hours a day, of 5 to 7 days a week. And it was really tough on my wife. And there was a couple of years there, of the first few years of kind of transition. Business got a lot more expensive. Rasks happen. That's a whole story. And it was tough on her, for me not to be around so much, and in a dynamic when we were used to that beforehand. Even though I would work in the garage, I was right there. I could come in and watch the kids. I could go out and do stuff for the family, or we were around. To go from that to not being around was really tough for us. But in the beginning, I was around. I was, the first 5 years of our business, we were or 3 or 4 anyway, we were in the garage, and I could watch my kids grow up, and I could play with them, and they could come help me in the garage, and that was awesome. And now that the kids are 7 and 10, they're actually way more independent and require less hands-on being around. So the time you do spend, it gets to be more quality time, as opposed to just the quantity of being with babies. And it's good. I think we have a good balance now. It's still kind of weird going to work and coming home, but I'm used to it. And it's tough being a business owner, because I'm always on and I'm always thinking about work. So when I am jumping on the trampoline with the kids, I am designing the next knife in my head. But I really, really try to be present with them as well, because obviously that's very important. And sometimes I get into these deep conversations with the kids, and that you get fully present for that. It's like, this is amazing. This is so much fun. Or we go for a hike, and it's just like fun and games, and you're there for that. So yeah, it's a balance, and it's a series of counterbalances. When I'm at work, I'm full work, and when I'm at home, I'm both. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's the best, but it works for me. So all you guys out there, just find what works for you, what makes you and your wife and your kids the happiest. Because we all have requirements and mortgages and bills, and we got to do stuff, but find the best way to do it. And have open conversations about it too. So you don't have one person resenting everything and the other person thinking it's fine. That's just
So
general.
speaking of that, Clint Vaughn had also asked about juggling family and entrepreneurship. You've mentioned in a couple of videos, like, oh, I've got to go. Like, have you made deals with your wife of like, this is what time I'm going to be home and I have to be here? Or have you said like, I'm going to be home this many hours a week? Like, how do you do scheduling so that you feel like you're, doing both?
For the past I don't know, for the past few years, I've tried to take weekends off. I don't really play in the shop too much on the weekends. I try to hold relatively normal hours. It's easy when the kids are in school. Drop them off at 8:30, be at the shop by 9, good to go. She can pick them up. I'm home by dinner. Um, uh, Something I've noticed, between her and I is if I'm terrible at saying, yeah, I'm almost done. We're texting each other at like 5, 6 o'clock. She's like, oh, what are your plans tonight? Yeah, I should be home normal time. I'm almost done. And 3 hours later, I'm like deep in some project that I opened up right after talking to her. And she's like, yeah, I just need to know, like, I don't like this unknown. You say you're almost done. And then 3 hours later, we've been expecting you. The kids are sad that you're not here. Like, I suck at that. And so certainly the past while I've worked really hard, try to be home 6, or at least communicate clearly and honestly what I'm actually going to do. But yeah, as long as we do spend a lot of time together, as long as everybody knows who I am, it's very important.
I think you said something that cannot hit home for me. And I think, like you said, any entrepreneur, you're always on. I'm always on. There's never a moment I'm not thinking about business or machining or manufacturing. And it's
Yep.
hard for other people to get that and realize, like, no,
Yeah.
I'm being serious.
It's
Like,
it's weird that people don't understand that to us.
it is. It's like, you don't understand. I can't turn this switch off. Like,
Yep.
it's not happening. Um, and I'm gonna play on the story that the kind of the picture you were painting there. You mentioned the Rask story. Give us a 2-minute story breakdown of that real quick.
All right. So here's the deal. So we're in Florida at my dad's wedding, his second wedding. And Eric and I are talking, and we're like, okay, let's make a knife that is easier to make. And maybe even we'll get somebody else to machine it. And I actually sent a quote to, what's his name? Albert, Machine Concepts. I sent a quote to him to have it made. This was 2015. I actually sent a quote to Titan as well to have this knife made in 2015. And at the end, we kind of realized, no, let's just make it ourselves. So we designed this Rask, this knife, and we're like, yeah, it'll be easier to make because we're putting different design features into it that'll be easier. And then we're like, okay, but let's get a bigger shop and let's get the Mori so we can make it even better. And then, okay, let's do a pre-order. So everybody pays their money down up front, full 100% deposit. And then we'll make it within 6 months. And that was the promise to everybody. Well, lo and behold, that didn't work. It did, because we got like 300 pre-orders over the course of the first year there.
Jeez.
And it was amazing because it allowed us to do what we needed to do. We're sitting on this pile of cash that we haven't earned yet, which is a terrible idea.
Yes.
But so the problem is, since, as I said before, we're so slow and we're developing a new product and we're so slow. And if I mentioned we're so slow that we started burning through the money. And then, we'd sell a couple knives or we'd ship a couple knives here and there. But we're still slow and we're still developing it. We're still trying to make it better and we're trying to perfect it. And we're getting the Nakamura so we can make our own hardware. And it's stupid. It's like the goal was never to finish the pre-order. The goal was just to make a great knife. But the goal should have been, this pre-order needs to get out the door, even if I have to have Danny Rudolph make all of our hardware. And that costs us a lot of money. Like, that should have happened. But anyway, so it took just over two full years to ship the last knife out the door.
Wow.
And in that time, we had burned through all of the money and much more. Every single credit card was maxed out. We were in a bad place. And Yeah, so I have such a sour taste in my mouth, both for pre-orders and for the Rask, which is why we stopped making it in 2017 because of this and some other reasons. Um, but thankfully, as I saw in your Instagram post, one of the other questions was explain the Barry situation. Barry is my father-in-law, my wife's dad, and right around 2017, we were deep in the depths of despair with this Rask pre-order, and we're like, we need help. We need at the very least manpower to help us finish the rest of these knives so we can clear this out. Um, so he was in a good place in his life where he could turn everything else off and come help us. And he worked for us full time for 1 year for no pay while going through cancer treatment.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it ended up being deferred pay, and we paid him all back for that whole year once we were in a great place, which was killer. But not only did he bring on the hands-on like work ability, he helped us make knives for that first 8 months or so. um, but he's been an accountant for 40 years, so he brought on business savvy and financial knowledge that I didn't really understand. I could barely balance the books and I could make sure stuff was getting paid. I had my own little spreadsheets, but he just brought on like the fire hose of knowledge with that kind of stuff. And he's like, "What's your break even point?" And I'm like, I think it's like this." And yeah, and not only that, but he taught me the skills required to be able to run a growing business. So those are some of the things that he brought on, and much more. And not only that, but he was a good whip cracker, which Eric and I are not. So he was like, "Dude, August 31st, we're shipping the last Rask out the door. I don't care how long we stay here." So August 31st, 2017, last Rask went out, and and then uh, and then we had to catch up. Like, these knives have already been paid for. We'd made no money for like a year. We feel bad selling Norseman because we should be making Rasks. It was a tough,
Kind of
tough.
a weird position you were in there.
Yeah, it was great because we had customers that wanted our stuff and had already paid us money, and things are good, but not if you're going to go out of business because you have no money and you're super in debt, and it's a terrible situation.
I just remember in your YouTube videos around that time, like there's this kind of like, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but just this vibe of like you could tell that you were in like a pickle there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't post a lot of videos then, um, both due to I was not depressed, but I was certainly in a sad place, um, and just beaten, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
But man, there was a feeling of relief on August 31st, and
Oh, I bet.
it was just like deep breath. Oh my gosh. Okay, Rasks are dead to us now. We're not making those anymore. Let's bring back the Norsemen. People, because Norsemen had been starved from the market for like 2 years. They were selling. There weren't that many out there. There were only like 500 or 600 out there at the time, and they were selling for triple on the secondary market.
Wow.
So we're like, okay,
Jeez.
screw it. Let's get back into Norsemen. We actually jacked the price on the Norsemen from like 600 to 900, and just see if anybody flinches. And some people commented, but for the most part, everybody just started paying it. And we're like, holy cow. Okay, that worked. Okay,
How many are you up to now, John?
uh 3,600 Norsemen.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
That's crazy.
in the past 2 years, or I guess we're almost 3 years since that point, since 2017, we've made 3,000 Norsemen.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
That's a
That
lot
was
of parts.
a
Exactly.
good question from TIR Services too. Yeah, I was interested to hear your answer about Barry as well because
Yeah, because I
I
mentioned it here
remembered
and
you
there,
saying
and
something about that.
like
Yeah.
part of me is not ashamed, but you don't like to air all your dirty laundry sometimes, and but there's a genuine level of struggle and lessons to be learned in that I'm now getting to the point in my life where it's distant enough that I'm free to talk about it, and we're we're past it enough, and we're succeeding and crushing in a way that I can look back on those with fondness, as well as whatever resentment or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a good lesson for a lot of budding knife makers to learn because you're not even the close to the first knife maker I've seen who's done pre-orders, and then I mean I've seen a few that are, I don't know, 4 or 5 years deep at this point on
yeah,
Kickstarter and have delivered nothing. So
exactly.
like, you actually delivered. At least it took you way longer than you expected, but
Yeah.
I think that that's a really good lesson is, don't catch your chickens before they hatch kind of thing. And
Well,
and
it's
money that is not earned is not your money yet.
exactly, and it's a false sense of security of like, oh, sweet, I got hundreds of customers that want my stuff, and they've already paid me money. Great, everybody's good, but there's like this. I mean, I'm sure some people are killer at running Kickstarter campaigns and these pre-order things, but I would think the majority kind of suck at it, ourselves included, um, of delivering on the deliverable, on making the product. Like manufacturing is not easy. You guys know this. There's a lot to it, and
Yep.
especially with us and our standards and our stupid pursuit of wanting to make everything ourselves and have everything be perfect. Um, it's a bad combination at that point in time. So from then on out, we went forward and we're like, okay, no more pre-orders. Let's change things. We'll call it maker's choice. We're just going to make whatever we want. And we're going to work on our process. We're going to work on our flow. We're going to work on getting consistent amount of knives out the door every week, even every day. Oh, can we ship a knife every day? That would be sick. Okay, let's work on that. So Barry helped us crack that whip and organize us. And he printed out these charts on the wall like a calendar, basically. And he forced Eric to write down, okay, how many knives did you put down? Did you finish today? 0. How many knives did you finish today? 0. How many knives today? 1. Okay, track it. I don't care how bad it feels. You have to track it. So you have to know what you just did. Because otherwise, Eric and I used to get to the end of the month and be like, how many knives do we make this month? I don't know. It felt good. We were busy. It was good. But especially being in catch-up mode for the Rask, it was like, when you don't know those numbers, it's horrible business. But we're busy doing our stuff, right? So don't ask me what I'm doing. Just trust that I'm doing good. But that's bad.
I'm right at that moment right now. I'm looking for a bookkeeper, an accountant to hire because I have a friend that owns a business in Chicago, and we talk, once or twice a week. And that was the last thing he said to me recently. He was like, what is your break even point? Like, when can you go full time at Proteum? And I was like, I don't know. I think it's this. And he was like, yeah, no, you need to know.
Yep.
Like, get that together. And I was like, yeah, that's fair.
I'll admit, I was spoiled having Barry there 8 hours a day, and I didn't even let him know the numbers for like the first 3 to 6 months, because he was there to help and work and finish rasks and stuff. And I didn't utilize his talents and his skills and open up my, spider web of books to him and utilize what he's capable of providing. And once I did, it was scary relief, because he's a practical guy and he looks at it and he goes, wow, okay, well, what are we going to do? Let's figure this out. It's just a puzzle. We'll figure it out. And it took a long time, but we did. And then, there was that moment of finishing the Rasks, which was amazing, but we're still super duper in debt. All the credit cards are still loaded. Next step. Okay, let's get the credit cards paid off. Okay, that took however many months, and that was a magical moment too. Like, holy cow, everybody's credit cards are paid off. We still have debt. We're still like a little bit underwater, but we're making money. We're okay. And then the next moment was like, all things considered, all the machines, all the assets, all the debts, everything. Wait, we're actually profitable. We're actually ahead. We actually have equity in the business. Holy cow, that was the next big one. And then it's been up since then. But I feel so much more confident about my business now that I know these things, now that I understand them, and I can pull numbers, broad spectrum numbers about what our revenues are and what our break even and what it costs per month to run the shop, and how much we spend in material and what our salaries are and all that stuff. And you got to know this stuff, otherwise you're blind. It's tough because I was there.
Yeah, and it's really tough when you've got such a small crew. I mean, it's like me balancing my books and running parts and programming, and
Yep.
it's like it's just too much at this
Something's
point. So I have
give,
to
right?
offload something.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So it just makes more sense.
So
What is this saying? Eliminate, automate, delegate.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's that from? Sounds familiar.
I can't remember.
Probably like an E-Myth or something.
Probably,
big.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess on to the next question. This one's kind of somewhat related. We have Pantech,
And Technicon design.
yeah, Uh, in retrospect, are there any steps you wish you had taken sooner in business?
It's tough because I don't like to live with regret
Regret?
or shoulda,
Yeah.
coulda, woulda, or like lessons are hard and lessons have to be learned hard. Otherwise, they're free. And like now in the days of memes and motivational posters and all this stuff, it's like it there's no value in a free lesson. You have to earn it. You have to bleed for that lesson to actually sink into your soul and mean something to you. Um, but yeah, I would have gotten the Swiss first. No,
All
but
right.
let me think of an actual answer to that. We wavered hiring people for the longest time. I think we did okay in that because we weren't ready for it yet. And I copped out at first, hiring Barry first for a year before bringing on somebody else. And that worked because it taught me how to work with somebody else. It was hard enough just working with my brother. We'd have our, disagreements back and forth, and we get mad at each other and then just go quiet for the next 3 weeks and not talk to each other and then have a long conversation and be all good again. And it turns out even today, like communication is number one. If we don't talk, then we're magically mad at each other. But if we do talk every day, which we do now, then it's, oh, things are great. Yeah, okay.
So I thought I remembered at one point you guys were doing like a kind of a State of the Union meeting, like once a week or something like that. Are you guys still doing that?
Every day, 12 o'clock.
Nice.
Yep. Can't miss it. I wish I were much better at structuring it. I watch Paul Akers and all of his lean meetings and stuff, and I'm a huge fan. Something about me is not able to pull that off. So a lot of the meetings are kind of, they're touch base on what's going on, what's new, what needs to be done, what people are missing, what they need, and all that. But there's no real structure to it, and I really, really wish there were. Even just a clipboard with like 5 things that we say every day would be a huge step. And I don't know why I'm not spending the 14 minutes it's going to take to make that. But it's otherwise it just the meetings are kind of baseless and a little floundery. You don't know what to say next. Whereas like you guys in the podcast now, you just ask the next question when there's an awkward pause. It's great. Same thing in the meetings that I need to figure out how to do that. But it is great. It gets everybody together. It's kind of the only time when all 8 of us are in the same place at the same time. So we get that kind of teamwork, team building thing. But there's a lot of work to be done there. But I do like getting together. It's very important, I think.
Yeah,
Especially,
you
yeah,
got
when you got a bigger building now and you don't even see some of these people all
Yeah,
day.
we have 2 buildings. We have the
Yeah,
machine shop and the
seriously.
finishing shop. So yeah, we have to communicate, otherwise we don't. And like I said with Eric, it's literally on my list every day. One of my critical tasks is spend some time talking to Eric because I have to. If we don't, then I don't know why, but we just get bitter at each other. It's stupid,
Yeah.
but that's the fact.
yeah.
We had a
It's super
question,
important.
I think, from where was it? NC Precision NC Inc.
Uh,
Yeah. Upsides and downsides of running a business with your brother.
Good question. Um, the sooner you can clarify the roles and responsibilities, the less bitterness there will be. And open conversation around that is key. Like in the E-Myth, they talk about this, and I think they even give an example of brother businesses or something. Um, it's tricky, especially when things are not clear. Like for the most part, I run the business and I handle all the customers, and it's a little bit different now that we have more staff and media department and accounting and things like that. But for the most part, I'm Mr. Businessman, and Eric is more runs the finishing department. He likes the focus. He likes to get in there and just be production, make the knives. He wants to be part of the bigger uh, aura of the business and make the big decisions and know what's going on. But I think we both like that I run stuff. But sometimes on both sides, that's not clear enough, and one or both of us gets bitter about something stupid. Um, so it's communication. That's all there is to it. And as long as we're on the same page, like as long as we understand each other, it's more important than agreeing. We can agree, we can disagree and still be friends about it, but only if we communicate.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my business partner is one of my best friends, and I mean, we're not brothers, obviously,
Yeah.
but I know the same thing. Like, we have awkward communication is better than no communication.
Right.
Like, getting that across and being like, this might be a tough thing for us to talk about, but we need to talk about it, and you need to understand where I'm coming from is super key.
Yeah, and
And like,
it's so tough because I am Mr. Non-confrontational. I hate arguing. I would rather just shut my mouth and not say anything. And I'm learning the importance in leadership role of, it's not speaking your mind, but it's just communicating. It's learning where they're coming from, letting them know what your actual intent is. Because we had a little thing today where Eric said something to the guys and they misunderstood it. They took it their own direction. And it was a little thing that kind of turned into a big thing. And I talked to Eric later and he goes, "Oh man, I didn't even think about that interpretation of it. Oh, I screwed that up. Holy cow." And yeah, it's just understanding each other and not being afraid on all sides, including the employees, to ask follow-up questions. Like, there should be no fear by anybody, you know?
yeah, totally. Yeah, I know one time there was a time where I was out of town for about a week, and in communication with Brad, my business partner, I was like, man, I don't even know if he like wants to be in business anymore. And I just ended up having to be like, do you want to shut down? Like this is your out. And he was like, no, 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 no. Like,
Yeah.
I've got other things on my mind. I'm so sorry. I didn't even think that that's the impression I was giving
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Like, and
Because
it's totally,
with lack of actual information, we're all left to make up our own conclusion. And
yeah.
if I don't convey my intent to the team of where I think we should go, and if I don't open up and explain that, then they're all making up their own scenario. Or, if I show up late because I've been at home programming for the past 4 hours, um, they don't know that. They just think I'm being lazy and showing up at noon. But they make up their own thing, and that's human nature, and that's okay. But you gotta explain direction. Um, yeah, and leadership is something I'm reading a lot about and thinking a lot about, and I want to get much better at right now. And it's fun to be able to shove that into my brain alongside with 5-axis and Rask and planning and teaching the Swiss and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, it's just another skill that's going to take time.
Yeah, it's going to take time, and it's necessary for where we want to go in this business. And my happy-go-lucky, non-confrontational, don't really talk about the big issues kind of personality is not going to get me where I want to go. So I just evolve. That's all. I still get to be me, but I just get to be a better version of me and be conscious with where I'm taking my life. And that's fun.
Yeah, all good things.
Definitely. So we got a couple quick ones. Built by Hutch asks, "What's your favorite part of what you do? CAD CAM, machining, problem solving, organization. What part of your day is your favorite part of your day?"
Probably a mix between playing, which means like just making new stuff, and problem solving. I as aggravating as it can be, I love problem solving. But like I said, I'm learning about leadership. I can't become the easy button for everybody. I need them to be able to uh, actively work on problems themselves and like come up, bring solutions to me instead of just say, this thing broke, how we fix. And I'm like, ooh, problem. Yes, I can dig into this. I can drop everything I'm doing and fix the tumbler coolant pump because that's fun to me and I know how to do that. I gotta pull back from that kind of garbage. It's so fun, but yeah. Other than that, I love. I'm okay at designing, but I love executing. I love the programming. I love the fixturing. I love the prototyping. I love getting it set up for production. I don't love running production. That's what I have a team for. So as much as I end up doing it, I have to realize that that's why I'm building a team so that they can run production and I can figure it all out. And then eventually they can figure it all out. And then we grow. Yay.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Let's see.
Another quick one from Gamble Garage was, "What did you use for CAD CAM when you had your Grizzly?" Because that was way before Fusion even existed.
A correct version of SolidWorks.
What?
Nothing.
You know, I always knew you used SolidWorks.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Nothing. What? Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, nothing.
No.
Nothing, yeah.
No, I switched to Fusion around 2016, 2015, something. 2016. And been on Fusion ever since. Love it.
Did you consider going to a more advanced cam system when you bought the Kern?
No. Never even thought about it.
Okay.
Just because I have a lot of friends that run 5-axis machines, Rob and others, like on Fusion. Rob has every software known to man, and he's like, Fusion's great. Like the others are better at some stuff, but all in one package, Fusion's great. So I'm like, sold.
Yeah.
I know Fusion. It can do 5-axis toolpaths. I'm tight with all the Autodesk guys. Like, why would I do anything else? It'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and the community is so good. I mean, you've talked about on your YouTube videos, your Instagram. You're like, hey, I've got this one little question, and then like a million people are like, hey, try this, then this, and this, and this. You know.
You know what's funny is I didn't realize what the name Fusion meant until Al Watmo from Autodesk like explained it to me in person once. And he goes, yeah, it's Fusion. We're buying all these other companies and we're fusing them into one product. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Of course. I just thought it was a cool name.
Oh, man. So Boone Freeman asked, how's the shop floor finish holding up, and would you change anything if you had to do it again?
It's... Okay, in the winter, it's kind of dangerous because we didn't put any grit in it, so it's just shiny epoxy. So when you have snow on the bottom of your shoes, it's really slick. It's like bad slick. You know, to the point where you like slip and you catch yourself, but we're all young and nimble. And if somebody who is not young and nimble does that, they're going to break a hip. So we ended up getting like floor mats everywhere, and maybe this coming winter we'll do that even more. So I still like having no grip when the floors are clean and dry because they're like super easy to mop and nice. I like the color, but it does, like a scratch will turn black just because of the dirt that's in it. And they do scuff just from moving machines around or dropping stuff or, dragging stuff across the floor when you can't lift it. But for the most part, it's holding, aside from little scuffs and scrapes, it's holding up really well. I noticed, I think I posted in one of my vlogs, like the area under my office chair where the wheels roll around and my feet are there and I'm tracking an outside micro dirt and just it all settles there. The wheels are crushing it into the ground and my feet are shuffling it into the ground and stuff. So I got to put a pad under my chair. But other than that, they hold up great. I mean, they're only like 5 or 6 months old. But we did a really solid mop and clean last week before Peter McKinnon came by, and even still, like a week later, they look sick. They look so nice. So it requires upkeep, but for what we want to do, have a beautiful shop, beautiful workspace, be able to like lay down on the ground and not feel gross. Not that we ever do, but it's just nice to be able to. Certainly to kneel down and like pick something up and not be afraid to just sit crisscross on the floor is awesome. So I like having an epoxy floor. In the old shop we did, and it wasn't as nice, but it was good. And this is just nicer. So it's a cost benefit. It might not last for 100 years, but I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. We got another one from TMC Makes. What almost stopped you from starting entrepreneur life, or what has been the closest you've been from walking away?
Always done it. Like ever since high school. I mean, I worked with my dad making websites for years until I went off on my own and started Troll Media.
I was going to ask you about that. I remember hearing about that.
Yep. Yeah, so that was like move in with my girlfriend, now my wife. Move in, step away from my dad's business, start my own conglomerate of website design companies. And I made like 3 websites for, made a couple grand on each one or whatever. And that kind of fizzled out. And then I turned to cars. And I was like, sweet, cars. That's way more fun than sitting in front of the computer all day. Now I'll just sit in front of forums all day and learn about cars. But yeah, so I never, as I said, I never walked away from entrepreneurship. It was always a requirement for me. I could never explain why. Even when, the world was weighing down on me, I'd literally go out into the woods and cry and not know what to do with my life because like right before I found knives. I'm not kidding about the crying in the woods thing. Like I was like, I have all this skill. I know a lot about cars and mechanics, and I have skills with my hands, and I can teach myself things, and I built these CNC machines. Why can't I do anything with my life? Like I need to put this all together into a package that's like makes money. And I was really, down and hard on myself. And then I found my industry. It just all came together. And I don't know if that's going to happen for everybody, but it could. I don't know. I just stuck with it until it worked. And then I found the industry and I was like, I'm in. And I mean, we didn't make money for like years on knives. Like we lived on, top ramen and macaroni cheese. And my wife's part-time salary, Eric moved across the country to help me grow the business. And he lived in our basement for like 3 years. And the three of us and our daughter were living off of Meg's part-time salary. And like, it was not easy. So just because where we are now is nice, first 5 years was like not easy, not profitable, barely paying the rent. The day that I could actually bring home money from the business was a big one, even if it was just $300.
It
But
just
I knew
goes to show hard work pays off, right?
yeah, if there's one thing I am, it's determined. Even then, even now, I'll just smash my head against the problem until it's done. Whether I'm building a car back in the day, or making a website, or then again, I also get to that 90% phase where I think it's done, but it's really not, and I don't finish it. So it's that balance, but I am determined, and I'll figure it out. So luckily I figured out business, or at least what it's taken to get us so far in business, and I have a lot more to figure out. But I like where we are, man. I wouldn't want to be where I was 8 years ago again. But I was there, and it got me here.
Definitely. So another one of Chief Bub's questions was, what's been your biggest influence as a business owner?
Probably other business owners, whether it's in the manufacturing industry, or others in the entrepreneur space. I take a lot of influence from a lot of different people. And, I've been a big fan of Tony Robbins forever. Like I remember borrowing the CDs from the library back in the early 2000s, listening to his personal power CDs and things like that. And now you've got the big guys on social media, the big fan of Gary Vee and Andy Frisella and a lot of other guys. So I gain, whether it's motivation or being yelled at by some of these guys, like sometimes you need to, or just being motivated by seeing other guys like you and Saunders and big companies and small companies just crushing it, doing what they love. I mean, making Lego figures is epic. Like I would never have looked at that as a business opportunity, but the fact that you're having fun doing it and doing a great job, and like that's inspiring to me. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's like, man,
it's a whole nother industry.
for sure. And most people have no idea that any of this exists. And I think that's hilarious.
Yep.
And especially because we have like literally hundreds of friends doing crazy cool stuff that the average Joe Q public has no concept about. It's kind of the secret organization that we all have of like, man, we all have fun in our garages and we make cool stuff. Everybody else is just going out and being veterinarians, which is great. We need veterinarians, but I'd rather machine stuff.
Yeah, even other machinists don't know a lot about this, unless they're on social media. I talk about your videos from time to time to my coworkers. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw this cool method, or I saw this cool tool
Right.
on this guy Grimsmo's videos, and they're like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, he makes these really, really, high end pocket knives, and they're like, well, what is that, like a $50 knife?
Exactly.
And I'm like, oh, buddy, like,
Yeah, I
Buddy.
get that. I remember early in our YouTube videos and in our knife business, people would comment on the videos and they'd be like, oh, I run, this fancy Mazak at work, but boy, would I love to be where you're at and have that stuff in your garage and own your own equipment. I was like, okay, hold on. You get to touch a Mazak every day and you're jealous of me with my Tormac? I don't get this. But then, over time, you start to understand it's that freedom. It's that a lot of machinists at work don't have, because it's work. And it's that perception of, like, true or not, of freedom that you get in your garage to just play and make billions of dollars from the comfort of your living room next to your car, kind of thing. I don't know.
Totally.
It's a different life.
Yep. It's not easy, but I wouldn't do anything else.
I agree. Let's see. I like this one from Southern Knives. When are you moving to Grimsmo Knives to Arizona? We have tacos.
Yeah, as another AZ citizen, you should consider it.
Yeah, exactly. No, same question to you, Brad, as I've asked you literally many times. When are you and your wife and your kid moving up to Canada, because there's a job opening for you, buddy? No, Brad and I have been friends. Like I mentioned, when I went to Vegas to that first knife show, I found myself standing next to this guy for like an hour just in a conversation. And somebody else calls his name, and I was like, "Oh, you're Brad Southard. You're that guy. I've been watching you on the forums for a while now." And we've been really close friends ever since. Brad's a
Yeah, he's a good guy.
great guy.
His shop's like right up the highway from mine.
Really?
Like, he bought me a probe tip when I snapped mine off a little while ago.
Nice.
And yeah, it's been cool to, I've heard about him through your videos and seen him on your videos, and then to like meet him in person was like, oh, this is so like cool and strange.
That's awesome. Yeah. So no, not moving to Arizona. I'm very happy with Canada.
So another one from Split 141 is our integral still happening? And if so, what are your plans for the pocket?
Haha. So the fabled integral is,
Here we go.
Instead of having two handles screwed together with spacers and stuff, this is one handle where you carve out the center that the blade closes into. A lot of people use a big 4 or 6 inch slitting saw on a powerful machine like the Mori, which I could add.
Didn't you buy one?
I bought a slitting saw with the Mori in my tooling package, and I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna make integrals, go!" And never happened. Never touched it. Never used it. Should, but anyway, I designed this integral in 2012, and like a year into the knife making, I'm like, "Oh, everybody's making integrals. I got to make an integral too. It's gonna be sick." Designed it, had it 3D printed. It's epic. I would totally carry the heck out of that thing every day. We got busy with everything else. Except now that I have the Kern, I'm starting to think of new cool ways. Like that would fit really good on a mini pallet. And just like how I was making those little fixture clamps, the integral could stick up from a dovetailed clamp. The handle would be fully exposed. Maybe I could use a long reach, what's it called? A high feed end mill, like a little 1/8 inch high feed end mill with a long reach, and just zip away that pocket. I don't know if there'd be enough rigidity, deflection, things like that, but I've certainly seen companies make that tool. And it wouldn't take too long for the Kern to be able to high feed mill that slot away. And,
Interesting.
And then it uses the RPM, uses the speed, uses that machine. I don't have to take a 18 horsepower cut on the Mori to be able to slot this thing out at 400 RPM. Because apparently it's a very aggressive
nice and
cut.
rigid too.
Yeah, exactly. So
straight through the Z and all that stuff.
So that's kind of that's my current thinking, if that would work, and I'm willing to invest and like buy some of those end mills, and I have titanium chunks that I've had since 2012. Dovetail them, throw them on, high feed mill the slot. Like if all I did was I bought a $80 high feed mill tomorrow, and I dovetailed some titanium and I did the slot, I'd be winning. Like I'd be happy at that point. And then I could just put it aside and get back to it later. Because that's the cool thing with pallets and 0-point systems is like, oh, I'll just put that away right now, and I'll deal with, I've made some progress. I'll come back and I'll finish it later. But Rasks first. Rasks need to be in ultimate production, and then I can eventually, maybe by the end of the year, start playing with this integral. And yeah, there's so much to do. I want to do everything.
Yeah, schedule that pallet to happen during the day, and then schedule your Rasks at night.
Oh, I'd be sick.
Yeah. Then flashlights.
I know.
There you go.
Well, after getting the Swiss, like almost all of the jobs have come off of the Nakamura, and it's only really running like 2 parts right now. And it's running a lot, but I'm like, there's a lot of room for flashlights on that machine right now.
Hey, there you go.
So now we have potential, we have capability. We're all busy, so we might expand the team over the next year, bring on more people. I'd love to grow the team and like have more. Either it's this constant debate of like, do you hire the expert or do you train the new guy? I don't know. Both are awesome. I don't know what
Yeah,
I'll
you've
do.
done both.
I've done both.
So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So
So is that something that Angelo could take care of? You could design the flashlight and then just hand it off and say, you run the knack, get it done.
honestly, we're not there yet, and I want us to be there. And that involves me. It probably involves me letting him know that it's okay to do that. To be honest, because I've done all the programming, and that's kind of my baby, and I'm hoarding it like it's my right and all that stupid stuff. But I'm starting to let go of a lot of things, and it's hard and it's stupid, but it's my truth. It's what's happening, and I got to let the guys know that it's okay to take stuff from me and to ask if they can do that instead of me. And it's I'm learning a lot about myself just in the past 6 months, and increasing my leadership skills of like, okay, there's a lot I gotta let go of here if we want to get where I want to get, and if the guys want to actually progress in their careers and be more valuable and learn new stuff and grow and stuff, and I'm holding them back.
I think it was
It's
really cool seeing you starting to teach Sky about the Swiss. That was like a big eye opener, I think, for a lot of people. Like, okay, John's letting go a little bit. This, like, everyone was cheering you on. I could tell.
Yeah, and that was
Oh yeah,
I didn't
totally.
expect that. Not that I was shooting for it. That's not why I did it, but it was nice to be able to share that honestly and genuinely, and like it's it's dumb on the surface because they're like, it's obvious, it's so obvious, but
Yeah,
I was clinging to it. It's my baby, it's my thing,
it's
it's what I do.
expensive. It's scary. Yeah,
It's not just that, it's literally being the expert. It's I like being the expert selfishly, and it's just a truth that I have that I don't like to admit, but it's fun. Like I've learned a lot of skills in this business, and I'm willing to work like 80 hours a week, just half of which is research and playing. And not everybody's willing to do that. So I've earned this skill, but I need to be able to let go of it, and I need to be able to move on to other things, because I will fill that 80 hours a week no matter what I'm doing.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it shouldn't be the work anymore. I have
It's
guys for
tough
that.
letting go though.
Yeah,
Like for sure. Like even with our Speedio that we just got, I've spent more time on it than Brad has, but like we both own it, but I still feel like nervous when I tell him to go set up something
exactly.
because it's like I want to just be able to brain dump all of the things I've learned
Yes,
and then feel totally comfortable. But like it's all the little things that like, oh, I forgot to tell you this. Oh, I forgot to
exactly.
tell you this. Oh, don't do that because you'll crash it. Like,
Because
you know.
you've earned the experience, and you should value that, and that's valuable. But it's also a tool, and it's a production tool, and with good instruction and good setup sheets and good error checking things, that 3-axis machine is a simple machine that should be able to be run by a 10-year-old, really.
Right, exactly. And he's a really competent
Exactly.
machinist. I should totally trust him, and I've never had an issue trusting him on any of the other machines. And I don't know if it's because it's a new machine or if it's because
Yeah,
I just have no
there's a
idea.
lot of
Like
reasons.
it's
Yep.
just dumb. Like, but I totally empathize with you.
Yep. So we all have to be able to open our mind, release our egos a little bit. I'm learning a lot about egos, and how I actually have a pretty gigantic secret ego, and how I'm like, because I hoard stuff and I like think I'm so smart and stuff, and it's eye opening in my own head. Like I don't talk about it a lot, but I think about it all the time. And the fun thing I've noticed is, as you're trying to grow yourself and to be a better person and be more observant, and you always have that little conversation that you did wrong, and you're like, I wish I would have done it different. And I've gotten over that wishing I did it different, because I'm like, you know what, that conversation is going to come up in the next 2 weeks again, guaranteed. It's happening. I will have another opportunity to be better soon, so don't feel bad about yesterday's thing, because guaranteed it's going to come back around. So do better next time. And
Yeah, exactly. feel bad if you do it twice.
Exactly. And just be aware of it. Don't beat yourself up, but if you're trying to get better, then make strides and actually try to get better, and don't feel bad about yesterday. Just learn from it.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, we had a question actually. You brought up setup sheets. What do you do for your setup sheets if you have any now?
I suck at setup sheets.
So maybe have Sky make them, or whoever you're teaching make them.
We've been talking about it almost daily, and yeah, we're in the process of doing that right now. We have to. It's stupid. It's so obvious when you think about it. You hear Paul Akers talk about it. You hear like all these Jay Pearson and stuff, and it's like great. It's the greatest thing in the world. But for me to actually get it done and implement it, or instruct the guys to do it or whatever, it's just not happening, and it has to happen. So it's definitely one of the higher things on our list that needs to start happening.
Yeah.
Or even do some videos or something.
It's funny?
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Without setup sheets, you have to be the expert to be able to pull it off. Maybe that's the crux of it right now, for me especially.
Right.
Like, especially with the Swiss, it's a very complicated machine, and I know everything about it. Of course, I'm the only one that can run it. And I was able to spend a lot of time with Sky and start teaching him things, and now he's picking it up. He can start the machine and make parts in a day by himself. He'll bring the odd question to me as he learns more and more, but even setup sheets will just, you shouldn't have to memorize all of this information. It should be just there,
just in one spot. Anyone can get it.
When you're setting up spacers on the Swiss, these are all the tools you put in, and these are where they are, and these are where they go in the machine, and this is how you touch them off. And I've just memorized all this stuff, so I feel like the expert because I know it all, and I'm the only one that can do it because I haven't shared this information with literally anybody else in the world. And it's this weird combination of bad things that combine into a bad situation. But we're learning.
Yeah. I think everybody can learn from that, though. I think that's a great lesson to be sharing with your audience, because I've gone back to run parts that I've run 6 or 8 months ago and been like, what do I do? And I have to relearn how to run that part again. And I hate that, because it's like, the last time I ran this, I was like, you should probably make a setup sheet for this. And then I didn't. And then
at the end of the job,
it is biting me in the ass.
The last thing you want to do at the end of the job is stop and rework it, but you just want to move on. Well, that's lessons for all of us to learn from.
Yeah, seriously.
So maybe before we get to the remainder of splits questions, we'll tackle one of Jody's kind of controversial questions, I guess. Would you still make knives if you found out your knife had been used in a murder?
Of a small child, he said.
Yeah.
I read this on Instagram, and I almost threw up just trying not to think about it. No, that's a very serious, deep question, and I don't think about it a lot, but I have certainly thought about it, because on one hand, at the end of the day, we make knives, and most people think knives are weapons. I think of them as tools and artwork, because 98% of the time, people are just using them to open Amazon boxes. But yeah, the thought that it could be used as a violent weapon, either in aggression or in self-defense, but still has actual consequences in the real world, that does worry me, and I don't like to think about it. I'm a non-violent guy. I don't think I've ever been in a real fight in my life. I see why there is violence in the world, good and bad and otherwise, but I don't need to be a part of it. So I don't know. It's tough, because what we make is art. Basically, it's useful, functional art. And if somebody wants to be an idiot and do a violent crime with it, they'll use a hammer or a baseball bat or a screwdriver or a car, just as likely as they'll use a $1,000 knife. More likely. So I don't know. Would I still make knives if I found out that was the case? I'd probably, but I'd feel extremely bad about it. I don't know. There's no good answer. I don't think I would stop my life if that happened, but I'd change some stuff. I don't know. It's really tough.
I like the part of your answer as far as it's like a tool. Like, you see all these guys on Instagram that make firearms related parts, and
for sure,
it's like it's kind of like you sign up for that from the get-go, like knowing that
Yeah.
that could happen, but like at the same time it's like it's just a tool. Like I'm not responsible for what someone does with the tool or how they use it. Like I'm just
Yep.
trying to make the coolest tool possible.
Exactly. And yeah, if I were in the firearm industry, that would be a lot closer to my mind. The fact that it could be used as a deadly weapon, like that's
Yeah.
literally the purpose of a handgun, is to shoot people, not animals. I'm sure people are not going to agree with that. I'm just exaggerating here, but
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, a car. Like I'm
yeah,
sure
for sure. Like,
car makers feel bad whenever there's any kind of car
but
accident,
are they
but
going to
they're not
stop
going to
making
stop making
cars?
a car.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We don't
Like,
see Elon shutting down all of a sudden.
right. It's especially in the case of Tesla. Like, if somebody dies because of an autopilot failure, like that's kind of their fault,
Yeah.
and they need to change something for that. But are they going to stop making cars? I hate that it just becomes a statistic at that point. But it's like whatever 10 years ago when Toyota had gas pedal failures or whatever the problem was, and like it's just par for the course. And luckily, we make a very niche product that goes to a very niche audience that is very not likely to be in the hands of somebody that aggressively violent. um, and if so, like, a kitchen knife is one of the most used weapons in a violent crime like that, because they're everywhere. So I don't know.
I
It's
guess
tough.
kind of a
yeah.
random comparison would be like, I hate to bring the subject on me, but what happens if someone choked on a Lego figure that I sold them, you know?
Right. It's at the end of the day, it's the people have to be responsible for their own actions, and it's their own
Yeah.
actions. And that could have been an M&M as much as it could have been your
Yeah,
life.
seriously.
It's
yeah. I think that's about as good as answered
yeah,
as
exactly.
we could we could expect for that
Yeah.
question. All right, so some more from Jonathan, split 141.
Yep.
Uh, is a belt grinder the best way to go for production knife sharpening?
So far, that's what we've found. That's what Eric uses. Pretty sure he uses my home built grinder to sharpen every single knife. Eric has sharpened 4,000 knives of ours. I have never sharpened a knife production in my life.
So the second part of that question that I forgot to write down was, should he make one or should he buy one? Should a budding knife maker make their own, or do you think it's important to make their own belt grinder, or
I
just
don't think it's
buy one and
important.
get it done?
I think there are some things that are important to do yourself, to learn the skill involved, to blah blah blah. But making your own belt grinder is not an important thing in the knife making career. It's a time versus money thing. When I built ours in 2013 or whatever, we had time, we had no money. So I was not buying whatever $1,500 grinder, because that's ridiculous. Where I can buy the parts for like $600, and even that was a stretch, and then spend a month building it. I think in Split's case, I mean, he's got some nice equipment already, the Haas mill and stuff. He could probably build it a lot faster than I did at the time. They're not that complicated, but it's a time versus money thing. If you can drop $800 to $1,500 on a valuable tool that you're going to use for your knife making career, then do it. If you can't, then build it, because you can build it for pretty cheap. And that's the case with anything. Like should I be lathe turning my coolant tubes for my fancy HSK holders, or should I just freaking buy them? And it's a fairly obvious answer, right? I could
Yeah.
make them because I know how, but don't be stupid.
Then
Another. Okay,
oh yeah, I was gonna say this one I like. What's your next car going to be?
You know what? I bought a Tesla.
Okay, hold up. I swear I saw the Tesla app on your phone in your latest video.
I didn't even think about that. I've had it for a long time. I haven't told
I
anybody.
knew I saw the icon.
Yeah, this is the first time I've said it publicly. I'm hiding it. I'm hoarding it. Whatever. It's
That's
my personal thing.
awesome.
I didn't buy it to show off. I bought it for me, and I freaking love it.
Oh, you already have it?
Oh, I've had it for like a year and a half. I've had it for almost 2 years.
Congrats.
Oh wow.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
After you rented that one, I was like, he's gonna get one.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah,
but he's
like
gonna
weeks
get
later.
one.
Yeah, and
That's awesome.
yeah, so it's a loan. We got a loan for it, but I love it. It's the greatest thing I've ever,
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's really cool to hear.
Congrats.
Yeah.
I figure
Well deserved.
after almost 2 years of having it, I can finally maybe tell some people that I have it.
Just get a picture of your knife in front of the hood ornament or the logo on the front.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's
Congrats.
I feel I don't know why I haven't shared. I kind of feel it's like a guilty pleasure, like I don't deserve it, or I don't know. There's a lot of weird internal feelings about why I've been hiding it so long, and I don't know. I'm done with it. I'm over hiding that stuff because it is what it is. I have a Kern now too, so it's no surprise. But
I think it's well
I was about to
deserved.
say,
You are
yeah.
successful
sure,
in this. You're a car guy or a past car guy. Like you it's well deserved. You didn't go out and buy a Ferrari. You bought like a nice, fun, practical car.
And you worked
yes,
for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and I'm very happy with it, and it gives me that sense of pride every time. I mean, I've owned 7 cars before that, and I've never paid more than $500 for a car, for
Wow.
any. And then I go out and buy a Tesla Model S, and this
Nice.
is how it rolls, man. It's step 1, step 2, step 10. That's full Grimsmo.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
recipe for Grimsmo right there.
I like it.
So one that he's got 2 left, and
Well,
one is
hold on,
probably a
hold on.
longer answer.
To answer your
Okay.
question, I'm good car wise. I don't need another car for a long time.
Okay.
So he says fixture building is about seemingly half of knife building.
It is.
What's your usual process for designing and building new fixtures? And I'm kind of curious about this too, because it seems like you can make or break a knife by designing the fixture correctly or
Absolutely.
incorrectly.
Yep. And it's all from experience. We've been doing this for 9 years. We've held the handle in 10 different ways. I had a vacuum pallet once with little Mighty Bite cam action clamps. So the vacuum would suck down 9 handles at once, and you'd have to like move all your fingers around and push them all down so that they'd all make suction at the same time, and then the cam action clamps. That worked okay, but it kind of sucked because a power failure or vacuum problem, or one pops out or something, then you lose the batch. We've had tabs on the outside, but bolting those down on the outside causes the inside to bow. And then we had 4 tabs around as a square, but that's too much material waste. So now what I love with the handles is just straight water jet profile, and we make little top clamps that come in and grip them down from just like fingernails, just from the outside, pulls them down a little bit. I love that method now. And then we thread mill little 440 holes into it, flip it over, and then we can use screws and thread it from behind the handle into the backside of the handle. Now the entire top of the handle is exposed. We can do 3D machining. We can do all our crazy stuff onto it. So that is a nice, simple 2-op handle, way to do the handles. And then for the blades, it's kind of similar. I'll put 1 or 2 bolt holes in it from water jet, bolt it down, top clamp somewhere. It's got to be rigid. You don't want it moving. And we've noticed tool breakage issues or whatever because these parts are actually moving under machining. So we keep ramping up the clamps, making them thicker, stronger, dimpled for grip, whatever, to make sure this stuff doesn't happen. And the beauty of running the repeat production that we do is we get to actually see cause and effect and be like, you know what, that 1/8-inch ball mill breaks every 10 parts. What the heck? It always breaks in the same spot, and it always breaks there, and we don't know why. So let's figure it out. Wow, the blade is actually shifting a little bit, because a finished blade would come off and it would fit in the knife weird. I'd be like, wait, is that the one that the tool broke on? Maybe. Holy cow, that's the one the tool broke on. And then the knife is like tip low in the handles. Oh, that's one of the low tip knives. We've got a stack of low tip blades because of this problem.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's just experience, trial, failure. We'll invest in a process. I like building fixtures. It takes time, but I want to find the best way to do it, which is why I'm so in love with the way we do it on the Mori right now. And that's the way I want to do it on the Kern, because I have a stable clamping process. The 5-axis guys see what I do and they're like, why don't you just hold a blade up by a dovetail and just machine both sides of it? And I'm like, you know how much of a wet noodle that's going to be? No way. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So,
So speaking of your fixtures, you've had, I don't know if you've solved your ringing problem with your 4140
you know what?
tombstone, but
I haven't. I was thread milling a 440 hole today and it was ringing. I was like, holy
huh.
crap. I think the tool
Wow.
was
Have you
actually,
thought of
the tool was
doing
actually
a cast
chattering.
iron tombstone?
I thought
Like, you've
about that.
got some great foundries up there, like core print patterns and stuff.
I don't want to machine cast iron. It's gross.
That's fair.
That's my best answer for it. It's gross. It mess up the coolant and stuff. I've never really machined it, but from everything I've heard, like, yeah, it's gross. But
That's fair.
yeah, it would be a good solution. But I think redesigning the tombstone, because right now it's like a rectangle, but I hollowed out the inside from one side, so we've got kind of these three free floating walls, sort of, and it's vibrating when cutting some stuff, I think. And somebody suggested if I take that rectangle and I bore it from the top and make like a hole through the middle, that'll cut a lot of the weight out and still leave me with a very rigid square structure instead of this clamshell type thing that I have now. So next fixture, version 2, is probably going to be that. And I'll probably farm out the boring and get somebody to deliver me like a rough 4-inch by 4-inch block with a big hole through the middle.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I like that flat plan. So that's version 2. But I think even with it ringing a little bit right now, I can still make parts. So I want to get this done.
Yeah, you're still in the early phases.
Yep. Not so early because I got 2 weeks to finish this now.
I know.
Yeah. No joke.
So let's see. We got one more from Split, and then I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah, bring it.
So we got Split, favorite memory of the last 10 years.
Oh my gosh. Can't answer that. I actually, truthfully, I don't do favorites. I can never think of a favorite candy bar, favorite flavor, favorite person, favorite movie. I just don't do favorites. I can't decide.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my 2 questions, I saw in one of your semi-recent videos, you said you found out that you love peppers so much when you're eating, and I was
Yes.
curious, do you know, like, everyone's like, if you blindfold someone, you can't tell the difference between the colors of peppers.
Okay.
I know I really like red peppers. I have no idea why. Do you have a preference of color?
Red, yellow, orange all basically taste the same to me.
Okay.
Green is bleh. Green's kind of, the red ones are sweet, like
Yeah.
red, yellow, and orange. They're nice and sweet and crispy. And green is just like my parents. As we were growing up as kids, Eric and I were always like pepperoni pizza, and they were like green pepper and mushroom pizza, and I was like, oh. So even still, I'll eat green peppers and mushrooms, and they're not my favorite. But boy, have I grown to love red, sweet bell peppers. Like,
Okay.
literally my favorite vegetable right now.
Yeah, and then my last question was, I saw in your latest video that went up today, you had on your, what was it, Trello app, I saw you said, one of them said 75 hard, and I know you listened to Andy Frisella. Are you going to do the 75 hard challenge? I actually just started it. I'm like on day 7 now myself.
Bro, I'm a year in.
Whoa.
I've been doing it almost every day for 14 months.
Really? The 2 workouts, everything, the whole shebang?
The whole shebang.
That's weird because I feel like you haven't talked about that at all.
I haven't. No, it's another one of those personal things I'm doing just for myself. But this year, 2020, up until 3 days ago, I've done the entire, 2 workouts a day, read 10 pages a day, eat really clean. What else was it?
Gallon of water
For sure. Some of the phase 2 things like cold shower. I've had a cold shower every day for the past year, and I love it now. It's so good.
Yep.
I do my outdoor workout. I go out for a walk every night, usually last thing before I go to bed, and then I wake up and I work out first thing in the morning downstairs. But this year I've worked out every single day. I've done the full routine until 3 days ago when I threw my back out doing lunges. And I'm like, what the heck?
Oh,
no.
Oh
geez.
man, I've never been stronger in my life, and I'm doing something I do every day, and like my back just pinched, and I think I have to stop. Oh no! So
Oh,
I did
no.
half workout that day, and then Sunday I didn't do anything. I just laid on the sofa and chilled. And then Monday I did a half workout, and today I did like a 3/4 workout, and I'm feeling much better. But dude, 75 hard is like changed everything about me.
I've already,
It's just
yeah.
it's made me more me, and it's added so much confidence to my life, and I love it. It's perfect.
That's really cool to see that you've been doing it and it's obviously paying off. So it's getting me more
Yep.
pumped to continue to do it.
And I am jacked. Like, for my
Shots fired. Grimsmo's jacked, guys.
Yeah.
Look out.
for my standards, for my, I looked at myself all the time, growing up. I've always been lean, and but I don't know. I just feel really good about myself. I got muscles that I didn't have before, and it just feels good.
That's awesome. That's the way it should be. All right. Well, I think that's it. Unless Dylan, you've thought of anything.
No, I think we've kind of covered everything I had questions about.
Really appreciate
really
all the time, John. Seriously.
Absolutely. This was super fun. It's interesting because I'm a super shy person, but I actually talk a lot when I'm comfortable with people, either in person or on the podcast, or I've got my podcast with Saunders. I'm comfortable with him. We talk about all kinds of stuff. I'm comfortable in front of the camera. I do all the YouTube videos. But this conversation opened up a lot that I've never talked about before, which is what's fun, because it's a new environment and new questions from you guys, and newer relationship between us, and it's good.
I know
You get
I
to
learned a
tease
lot.
a
I
lot
hope
out
you
of me.
did too.
Yeah, no, there's a lot said here that I've never said publicly, which is great. It's fantastic, because it's letting me release it too and not be so scared to like share truths. But like 75 hard, like my Tesla, like I've never told anybody about these things because they're for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your personality. We want to know more about you, and we definitely did learn a lot. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Awesome, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, thanks again. And guys, we will be back with Dylan and I next week, and that'll be episode 53. That's crazy. All right.
Yep.
See you next week, guys.